to senior faculties, fellow panelists, ladies and gentlemen. At the outset, I would like to thank the Law and Development Institute and the National University Singapore Center for Asian Legal Studies for this opportunity, an absolute privilege to be amongst this August gathering. Starting off our presentation on COVID-19 pandemic prejudice and discrimination against migrant workers of South Asia. The flow of the presentation shall be, I'll begin with the introduction and the objectives of our research, the patterns of migration observed in South Asia, the discrimination and right to development, followed by my co-author discussing the case studies and the conclusion. Migration is an expression of human aspiration for dignity, safety, and better future. Are the popular words by former United Nations Secretary General Ban Ki-moon at the high-level dialogue on international migration and development. However, I found a better stanza to appropriate one for the presentation today, and it is in Hindi, which says, "हम तो है प्रवासी पक्षी, कभी यहाँ कभी वहाँ चले, जहाँ भी मिलता दाना पानी, चुनते चुनते वहाँ चले," which translates to basically, we are migratory birds. Sometimes we go here, sometimes we go there. Wherever food and water is available, let's go there collectively. So this basically is a metaphor of a migratory bird, and it highlights the innate human aspiration to seek better opportunities and necessities in different locations. In May 2019, 1 year before India went into lockdown, and basically the whole world went into lockdown, as an intern at National Human Rights Commission, I had the opportunity to work on a project titled Human Rights of Interstate Migrant Workers in India. And here, as a part of the project, I visited settlements nearby. So this was the settlement of DLF Faridabad. And these are the people that we interviewed. The person sitting there is Prem Kumar Singh. He is a security guard, not from Delhi, but miles away from Delhi, and he has been working away from his family, away from his children, parents, for 20 odd years. And when the news of the pandemic or the lockdown came in, it was an eye-opener. All that had happened 1 year back came rushing to me, and it was the images of migrant workers walking miles and miles, facing the prejudice, the discrimination, losing their lives on the way, and facing the wrath of what the modern society's mindset was actually an eye-opener 1 year later. When I went there, it was just for a project, just for study, but this is why I consider this the subject of migration and human rights close to my heart, although my subject specialization lies in international trade law, which is completely two different aspects of law. Now, what are the objectives of this study, or what are the objectives of our research? We study the pattern of migration in South Asia in general. We observe the impact of return migration on the economy during the COVID-19 situation. We study the status of migrant workers in South Asia with the case studies, and analyze the right to development, what basically it entails. Although I think my co-panelist has explained and brought to light a aspect or a covenant which I think would have great impact on human rights across the globe of all the vulnerable sections. And conclusion and remarks. So the definition. Starting with the concept of migration, to be honest, was recognized by colonial scholars, that is Vittoria and Hugo Grotius, who considered migration as principle of international law through the right of communication between people. And we know why they advocated migration. It was basically for the purpose of colonization. Then United Nations International Migration Report of 2017 defined migration as movement of persons, a group of persons either across an international border or within a state. However, when I speak about international migrant workers, the definition as a whole is not explained anywhere. Tomorrow, as a professor or as a lecturer, I visit another state for employment. Will I be an international migrant worker? The answer is not clear. As compared to a person from India going to Dubai, working on a construction site for the upcoming games or something. Or will that person be an international migrant worker? So the definition remains unclear. So although international migrant has been defined. Migrant of working age, that is above age of 15, has been defined. The term holistically as who is an international migrant worker who needs to be protected is nowhere defined up till yet. The second component here that we look at is SDG 8, and we look at it because of the right to development. SDG 8 basically speaks about economic growth and development, and the significance here is that based on this, we can promote the development and protection of international migrant workers in the world. Now, focusing on the patterns of migration, this is based on our 2020 data of the ILO, which focuses on the 7 South Asian countries: Afghanistan, Bhutan, Bangladesh, um, India, Pakistan, Sri Lanka, and Afghanistan. Yeah. So basically, focusing on this and what is the pattern of this total population, what is basically the popular destination, or the where do the migrant workers prefer to go, and this is the data. But more over, what I would like to focus on is why do they migrate. Now the reasons for migration are various, ranging from better development, better work, to get a better pursuit of life, security, opportunities. Afghanistan, mainly we see that the migration is due to the ongoing violence, and the United Nations Assistance Mission for Afghanistan reported civilian casualties of around 3,774 over the past 1 year since the Taliban regime has taken over, and we have seen images circulating around social media of people escaping from Afghanistan. Although they are not migrants, but that is the situation. Second is Bangladesh. Now, the major reason for migration out of Bangladesh is basically the country's poverty level and the low wage rates. Bhutan, although with the gross national happiness index, which is quite popular for 6% of its total people, have left the country since 2020. In 2022, 12.4% of the people are living below the national poverty line. When it comes to India, the major push factor is its current socio-economic status, the increasing population and opportunities. 2020 saw 7.9% unemployment rate in India, and the Niti Aayog's national multidimensional poverty index was 14.96%. When it comes to Maldives, the Asian Development Bank in 2019 has reported 5.4% of its total people living below the national poverty line. And basically, the job opportunities over here, the avenues are in tourism. So that's one of the major push factors. When it comes to Nepal, 7.1% of its total population seeks better opportunities in neighboring countries, especially India, Bangladesh. So their migration west is very less. It's around neighboring countries. When we move towards Pakistan, the Pakistan Bureau of Statistics reported the unemployment rate to be 5.7% in the first quarter of 2021. So majorly, if you look in these South Asian countries, the reason or the push factor is to look for better job opportunities or financial means. Now with that, we move towards the part of discrimination. Whenever we speak about migration or migration and outbreak of uh, any disease or any global issue, we look at vulnerable categories. Now, these vulnerable categories can be anybody, and usually when we speak about migration, it is considered to be the scapegoat for anything. For example, when cholera, uh, the started as an epidemic, the Irish and the blacks, the poor blacks, were considered to be the target. So they were the stigmatized group. In case of HIV/AIDS, even still today, there have been reports and there have been studies which have shown that African Americans and increasingly the third gender is considered to be the cause for this disease. When in case of H1N1 flu, in the USA, the Mexicans and or the non-Latins were the stigmatized group. So that is what the concept is. In every society, we look for a vulnerable group and stigmatize them. Similarly, when it came to COVID-19, due to migration and specifically because of social media and technology, the stigmatization is much more. Human Rights Watch reported racism and xenophobia against Asians, and the Secretary General urged the states to fight against the virus of hate, and that still remains same. In case of India, we saw a certain population which did not look uh, like the rest of the country was stigmatized. There were news reports, and as our chair in his keynote speech said, it is technology. It is the statements which were made by certain leaders. For example, there were Facebook groups such as Voice of Europe, which said that asylum seekers, and they showed pictures. In the paper, if you go in the footnotes, you will find a report of it, wherein if you click on the link, you will go to the image. Asylum seekers were rioting with ISIS flag, and they were breaking the lockdown rules. And this Facebook post has 100,000 shares, not likes. 677 shares on the national public, which says that thank goodness President Trump is strict on the borders. We wonder what Hillary would have done. So these were the news reports which were going on, and this is what led to stigmatization and discrimination against a certain section of people because of the way they looked, and because of social media. This was much more. Now, to counteract the conspiracy theories, an independent non-profit organization, that is the Institute for Strategic Dialogue, had to release documents. It had to release statements saying that this is fake information. This is please do not believe this. Please look out for the human rights of your fellow mates. Besides this, the migrants faced various issues of travel restrictions, especially because the flights were cancelled. Migrants were left stranded. The mobility was hampered. They were losing their jobs amongst all of this, and that brings us to right to development, and we look at the remittances. Now, all the 7 countries have been taken into consideration here. The data of 4 years from 2019 to 2022 has been taken. Although you might say, what about Bangladesh, Bhutan, and Pakistan? When the pandemic struck in 2020, they got a good amount of remittance. But to be honest, that has been the case with these 3 countries even in 2008, when the global economic crisis hit. It is a trend in these countries that the migrants or the working class come back home along with all their savings, and that is how the remittances increase. Despite that, you would see the next year, even if in 2020 the remittances have been more, the following year they have dipped. And that has affected the country, the population as a whole. And that is the economic impact of COVID-19 and migration on the economy of the country. Now, coming towards the right to development, there is an intrinsic link between migration and development. And migration has been, as we saw in the stanza in the beginning, it is perceived as a strategy for poverty elevation, risk diversification, and overcoming geographic limitation to resources and opportunities. What right to development entails is non-discrimination. When I say non-discrimination, it is not discriminating migrants. International migrants are different from the local population, giving them equal opportunity to services, resources, and healthcare. When it comes to economic and social inclusion, economic opportunities and social services in the host countries on equal footing with the local population, including right to work, education, healthcare, care, and social protection. Political participation, although that is limited, must be allowed in the host state. Human rights protection with regard to the migrant workers, the UDHR and the governance speak about it. However, implementation is what matters. Return and reintegration is migrants have the right to return to their home countries if and when they wish to do so. There should be no bar on this. Now, how have international organizations been involved in this? It is mainly the ILO, the International Labour Organization, the International Organization on Migration, which have been the key players when it comes to protection of rights of the migrants. For instance, the IMO set up the COVID-19 Return Task Force and helped around 37,000 migrants worldwide, not just in South Asia, worldwide, to return voluntarily back home. Currently, ILO and IMO have collaborated certain initiatives such as pre-departure training modules pertaining which basically provides information and training as to how a migrant, what are the rights of a migrant to the destination country. Then NOMAD is another institution which has been quite active in protecting the rights of migrants. With that, I think I just have 4 minutes, and I will leave those 4 minutes for my co-presenter.